This episode brought to you by way of our sponsors, Kinetic Performance Dog Food. Kinetic's line of premium dry food and supplements provides clean, sustainable energy for everyday active, sporting, and working dogs. Visit kineticdogfood.com for details. And Highland Hideaway Hunting Preserve in Riverside, Iowa, with over 1,500 acres of meticulously managed and maintained preserve. Book a hunt today at highlandhunting.com. And now, on with our show.
And tonight we'll get a chance to talk with Bob Harken. And Bob hunted for years in Iowa, grew up in Iowa Falls, Iowa, and we want to just get some history from him, talk about bird hunting and what it was like back in the earlier days when he was growing up. Bob, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
And so, Bob, tell us a little bit about growing up in Iowa Falls, Iowa. What was that like?
Well, I thought it was just a perfect sized community, about 6,500 in the town, big farming community. And I love farmers because as a young guy, I connected with a number of them, and I'd be working baling hay, shelling corn, walking beans, you name it, I did it. And I just love that all of the farmers that I worked with, especially for the meals that their wives made at noon. And they used to say, kid, you not only have one hollow leg, you got two hollow legs. And I'd wear 2.5 pound weights on my ankles, and they'd shake their head saying, what in the world are you doing that for? I said, this is just a free workout for football. So they got a lot of chuckles out of that. And I got a lot of work in, and I loved every minute of it. It was wonderful. I just felt it was just a great place to grow up.
Let's talk a little bit about bird hunting back in that time. Was that a pretty popular thing with the guys in your age group when you were growing up there?
The yes and no. The group of guys that I was most tight with was about 4 guys, and we all were on it, kind of a deal. And it was a situation where we would just go in a car and road hunt. And during those times, it was very easy to spot the roosters in the ditches, and we did very well with that. So we would go down a road, and when we saw them, we'd pull out and get down in the opposite ditch, kind of make a marker where we knew they were. And when we saw that marker, we'd run across the road, and they'd come up, and we were very successful with that. So that was, something that we kind of lived by all the time. Now, just a blast.
What year are we talking about then when you were?
Well, I graduated in 1967. So I think we started hunting around my sophomore year, and then continued right through my junior and senior year. I remember that I started with a single shot 410, and after a while, I heard about a guy over in Charles City, which was maybe 50 miles from where we grew up, and he got emphysema. He couldn't hunt anymore, and he had an ad in the paper wanting to sell a Remington 870 12 gauge pump, and it's kind of funny because we figured out where he lived and went over there and looked it over. It was in excellent condition, and I asked him how much. $50. So I had $50 on me, gave it to him, and we went home very happy. And I still have that gun to this day, and don't shoot it at all anymore. But it's just kind of a nice little what I can't even think of the name now, but
we call those we kind of call those legacy guns. Guns that have you've used during your lifetime or a family member has, and they kind of hold a special place in the gun safe.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was your first shotgun that you owned, was that 870 Remington then?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So what were the bird numbers like in mid 60s around Iowa Falls? I mean, were there just You talked like it wasn't hard to
There
find them
was,
road hunting, where they're just really
yeah,
thick.
there was lots. And the other side of it is, I was thinking about this. I started dating my wife, who was a farm girl, my junior year. she lived she lived in a small town south of Iowa Falls, and so I go out and pick her up on like a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday. I think it was mostly Sundays, and we just go down the road, and I always cracked up because I'd be driving and she'd be looking in the ditch, and she was very good at finding them. So she'd point one out, and like I said earlier, I'd pull off to the side. I'd go to the marker where she said it was and jump across the road, and there was a bird. And many times I got my limit of 3 birds doing that on a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon. And it was just a lot of fun,
Yeah.
nice day, and just go out and do that. So it's kind of cool.
Now, what was, I've heard stories. I've obviously lived in Iowa for 40 some years, but back at that time, what was opening day typically like? I mean, were there out of state people coming from everywhere? I mean, Iowa was pretty big at that time for kind of a bird destination, right?
Yeah, it was definitely. And that's a very good question. I'm trying to think back. Yeah, there was some people coming from as far away as Ohio. I actually got surprised because I have a brother-in-law who has a farm north of Iowa Falls around Hampton, and one time it was for opener, and they weren't hunting on my brother-in-law's land, but they were hunting on another farmer's land, and so they kind of beat us to that spot. I think there was about 6 of them. We talked to them briefly, and they were from Ohio. I thought, wow, you kind of came a long ways there, type of thing. So I think the word was getting out that there was definitely some good bird hunting in Iowa.
Right. And then obviously you kept hunting and still are hunting today, but at some point dogs kind of came into the picture. How did that all happen?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out the right back. Oh, God, how could I forget this? The first dog I owned was a Brittany Spaniel, a tricolor, black, orange, and white. Just
Wow.
beautiful. And my youngest son, who was probably at about 15 at that time, I think I'd mentioned to him I was considering a dog that I'd figured out where he was and so forth. Excuse me. And I'll never forget it. I was talking to my wife on, I don't even know what day it was. We were in the living room of our home, and all of a sudden I heard the doorbell ring. So I went over and opened up the door. Here's my son holding this pup, and he had pulled the money from his older brother and his sister and gave it to me as a wedding gift, an anniversary gift.
Oh, wow.
It just blew me away. Really a cute little pup, and obviously a real surprise because I had no inkling that he did that. I don't even know how he figured out where I was at because I told the guy I was going to buy the dog and everything, and I don't even know how he figured that out because he wasn't with me. I made a couple of trips to meet the guy and look at the dog and check it all out and everything, but it absolutely probably was the biggest surprise in terms of a gift that I ever got. It was just amazing to me.
Yeah.
So
did you train that dog yourself then, or how did that go?
Yeah, I did, and I was a rookie, and I just talked to the breeder and got some tips from him, kind of a thing like taking a pheasant wing tied to a fish line and throwing it out there, and he would point it and play around with it, basically, is what I did. The problem I encountered was he was a male, and I thought, oh, this would be a fun thing to breed him. Well, I decided, no, I'm not going to do that. That sounds like too much work. That was a huge mistake because if a new dog moved into the neighborhood, he was gone. He would he would check that out. I literally had to bail him out of the police dog pound 3 different times. It was $50 a pop, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't believe the sense of smell that he had, and unreal. It was unbelievable. Then it showed up AOL, and the police. I had a collar on him and stuff, so they'd call me and come on down. We got your dog. Bring some money, type of deal. So
well, at least
that
they
was
knew.
something
At
else.
least they knew who to call when he would
That's
show
right.
up there, right?
Yeah,
Well,
they figured it out pretty quickly. They knew the dog. They'd call me.
So with a nose like that, I'm guessing he was a pretty good hunting dog then.
Oh, he was. In fact, another one was my brother. I was hunting with my brother-in-law, and we were down in southern Iowa someplace, and somehow the dog, we weren't paying attention what we were doing, and the dog wound up behind us. And I figured it out. I looked, and he was locked on point. And my brother-in-law said, "Wow, I guess he really does have a good nose." And the bird came up, and I can't remember if we got it or missed it, but his reaction to that whole thing, because he'd never hunted behind a dog, was pretty funny. We had some laughs on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had a nose that was unreal.
And so, obviously, I know you're into German Shorthairs now. So at some point, you kind of switch breeds then.
I did, and the main reason for that is I've got another friend who had a German Shorthair, and he made a statement one day, because I love my first dog. His name was Cody, and it was great. But after every time we'd go out in the weeds or whatever, I had to comb him out, birds in his fur and all that. Literally spend at least an hour combing him out. My buddy told me, he said, "Well, you should try a German Shorthair. They're low maintenance." And I figured that out, and so then I found out about a breeder who had a new batch of pups in. Went out and talked to him. That in depth, I was able to get pick of the litter, and so I purchased that dog. Her name was Molly, and beautiful liver and white, just a beautiful dog, and it was really cool because. In her case, she wouldn't retrieve the bird, but she would point it, lock up on point, and when I'd shoot it, she would pin it down, wouldn't retrieve it back to you, but would pin it down, and as far as I remember, no bird got away from her, kind of a deal.
Right.
And she was just a hunting machine. It was really, really just an awful lot of fun. And I even to this day, I told people, if you haven't hunted behind a pointer, you haven't hunted. Because to me, it's amazing to see the DNA that's built into them with an invisible barrier to say, I can't get any closer to this bird or he's going to flush before my master gets up here. And true story with both her and my present dog, never bumped a bird, never flushed it too early. It was just incredible to me that's all part of the DNA that's in them. You can't teach them how to point. You teach them maybe to retrieve, but not point. It's all in their DNA.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
To me, it's one of the most beautiful things you'll ever see. It's unreal.
Yeah, it is. And so, yeah, people that experience that for the first time are pretty awestruck. That's for sure. And,
for sure.
I'd like to see people get to experience that for the first time. We see a lot of them down at the preserve where we do some guiding, but yeah, it's great, and I can't get enough of it, watching those dogs do what they do. That
That's what hit me. I just go, this is the greatest thing going. So it's, to me, not only that, but honestly, it's added years to my life. I think the joy of especially working with the first one, where I mentioned this to you before, I found out about a book that was in the public library. It's called Gun Dog. By the way, I called, and I called the Maple Grove Library today, and they still have it on the shelf. It was printed in 1961.
Yeah.
It was billed as the best gun dog book you could get, and I looked at it and I read it verse upon verse. And I went out and applied all of those things in that book to training Molly. And one of the most important things was, don't try to take your dog out for an hour session. Do it in like a 20-minute session. Always do something that it's fun for them, and just keep reinforcing. Well, I found out really quickly that both her and the one I've got now, they are really smart, and you don't have to pound it into their heads. They pick it up real fast. In fact, it seems like both of them understood what I was saying right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was, to me, the training part was as much fun as going hunting.
Well, you're kind of like me. The first dog kind of trains you, and then after that, the next dog that comes along, you kind of apply the lessons learned. So maybe some of the mistakes that you made along the way, but the things you learned from it.
Yeah.
And so the theory is that each dog you should be better at it, right?
Yeah.
And have a better ending product. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But I want to put you in that time machine again and kind of go back to Iowa Falls and dig a little deeper into, when you first started to hunt, you get the shotgun, what we talked about, the 870. And I know you were doing some road hunting, which was pretty popular back then, but was there a point where you started actually doing some field hunting with the dogs, where you're actually, you knew a lot of farmers, and what was that transition like, where you were actually going into the field and hunting big areas of cover?
Well, it was something that, just kind of came natural because I knew a lot of hunters, and I think the road hunting thing was when we just decided that we wanted to enjoy, like, for example, on a Sunday afternoon, we'd go out and we'd hunt until about 4 o'clock when the next NFL game was kicking off. And so we'd hunt for a couple of hours before that, basically road hunting, or, not if we had a field that we knew we could move or whatever, we would do that too. But the point being, on a Sunday afternoon, it was kind of cool. We'd hunt up until 4 o'clock, then we knew a new game was kicking off. So we'd quit. We'd go to whoever house was hosting it then, and have some chips and burgers and, some beverages to go with it. And it was just kind of a Sunday afternoon deal that we did all the time, kind of thing.
And then when you really wanted to kind of hunt, I guess, for several hours or half a day or whatever, then you probably had a lot of land. I had a lot at that time. Access to land really wasn't that hard, was it? Like it is today?
No, you're right. Back in the good old days, and number one, my father-in-law became an implement dealer in a small town called Radcliffe. He grew up there, so everybody knew his name. So I just tell him I was Orville Knutson's son-in-law, and I'll be hunting. Oh, absolutely. I got all kinds of places, and so, the population, like we were saying, I know was higher than type of deal for sure, and it was nothing to get our limits. In fact, I remember one Thanksgiving, my brother-in-law and I looked at my father-in-law. We had our dinner, and we said, we're going to go out and get some pheasants. And he says, oh, you won't get any pheasants. I said, we'll come back with our limit. Well, 30 minutes later, we came back with 3 pheasants apiece. I said, here you go.
Wow. And that was just hunting the farm there that they lived on?
Yeah. He lived in town, actually. So we just road hunted.
Oh, gotcha.
We road hunted on a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and there's one, and we'd get out and do our deal. And when we came back with 3 birds apiece, it blew him away. We were laughing like crazy. You'll never get any birds.
I think we kind of touched on it, but how did your hunting kind of change though once the dog kind of came into the picture? Obviously a lot of guys say, well, I didn't need a dog back in those days because there were so many birds, and that's true. But once the dog kind of came into the picture, it kind of changes, because you're watching, you're kind of like, for me, you're kind of you're locked into the dog work almost as much as you are the other parts of the hunting. So what was that like?
Absolutely. Well, like I said, once you get a dog and you know how good they are, there's no more road hunting kind of a deal. So then we'd be working the grass in all the areas that I had. And, yeah, it was just the joy of seeing that dog work was, that really does something to you to see the beauty of it, to see how good their sense of smell is. And then, like I said, for the one I've got now, she'll retrieve it right back to you,
Right.
which is an incredible extra benefit. And like I said earlier, I know it's added years to my life, the pure enjoyment of it. B, the exercise. In fact, about 5 years ago, we got permission on a new hunk of land, and it was very, very tall ironweeds, tall, about 2 foot taller than me, really, really dense. And there was hundreds of birds in there. And we broke up into two groups. My two sons went up to the up on the road, and then they said, "We're going to come down the ditches, one in each ditch, coming towards you." I said, "Okay." Well, then I heard them shoot one time. I'm looking for my dog. I couldn't find her because it was so thick. All of a sudden, about 400 yards away, here she comes with that rooster in her mouth, bringing it to me. I laughed so hard it was unreal. Like, I don't know who those guys are that shot this bird, but I know who you are. Here you go. put it right down
She knew
in
you were
front
the
of
one
me.
that fed her, right?
She knew. She knew I was the guy. And I just laughed like you wouldn't believe.
So it
And
sounds like.
then on
Go ahead.
okay, I'll finish it with this. On that hunt, I had just got a Fitbit, and it was time to go back to Minneapolis. We were living in Minneapolis at the time. I jumped in the car. I looked at my Fitbit and I said, "Take a guess on how many miles we walked today." They had no clue. I said, "We walked 10 miles. And if we walked 10 miles, I'd be willing to bet she did close to 100. That's how she covers ground."
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
going, amazing,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
They are amazing. Now, if you grew up in Iowa and you were a pheasant hunter, you probably along the way hunted in a lot of snow. Do you remember what that was like?
Oh, yeah.
Any particular snow adventures that you had?
Well, the biggest one is this is another event that will be seared in my mind forever. By now, I'm living in Cedar Falls. We're married. I went to University of Northern Iowa. So did my brother-in-law, who married my wife's closest in age to her sister. And so it was a brutally cold day, and we were bored. We decided we are going to go out hunting. And he's driving, and honest to God, and there's wind blowing, a wind chill probably well over 30 below. And he just got done saying, "This sucker will get through anything." And right after he said that, we went sideways into the ditch. And I'll never forget it because he was trying everything he could to get it out. He had a scoop shovel. We were trying to do that. We're quite a ways from any close farms. And I actually panicked probably for the first time in my life because I said to myself, if we don't get this car out, I think we'll be frozen before we get to a house and can get some help. I'm dead serious about that. And so I was pushing as hard as I could to get it out. Finally got lucky and we got it out. Got to my apartment and my fingers were frozen so hard it felt like knives in my hands. And basically I was crying. I mean, it was painful like you wouldn't believe. And I'm going, this is incredible. I mean, I'm serious. We could have frozen to death. And that was pretty ugly. But, we were out there.
I
Giving her a try.
I thought you were going to say once you warmed up, then you went back out and tried to find some more birds.
Well, the next weekend we did.
Oh, okay.
Not that day. No way.
Yeah, snow.
That was ugly.
Yeah, it's an interesting time of year, and a little snow on the ground usually helps, as you know.
Oh, sure.
With the bird hunting, but there's a limit to the coldness and the other things that come along with it. But yeah, I've been out there probably when I shouldn't have been. It wasn't a smart thing to do, but you're trying to get in.
Yeah.
You're
The dream,
trying to squeeze in them last few hunts before the season ends, right?
oh yeah, exactly. You hit the nail right on the head. A and B. Sometimes there's always the dream of when it's cold like that and with some snow. If you hit you can really hit them when they're collected together, and you're always thinking about that. So
No.
you think you're going to run in about 30 at a time. Which has happened a few times, but that's always the thing you're working on. Like when I drove up from Florida and it was 30 below out, there was no wind, thankfully, but it was really cold. And we thought, well, maybe we'll see some grouped up here, but after 3 days, didn't pull the trigger. That wasn't the case.
Ooh, wow. Yeah. Yeah, that January? Probably right towards the end
Yeah.
of the season, I think you said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I always did a deal where I hunted the last day of the season, and that particular one didn't work out too good.
Now we had your good friend Ed on a week or two ago, and I know Ed was one of those buddies of yours that you grew up with.
Yep.
And kind of in that group that you had hunt with quite a bit. So who was the better shot, you or Ed?
You know what? Ed was a good shot. There's no question. I don't know. He was just kind of a natural kind of thing. I thought I kind of held my own, but he had a real good eye, and he was pretty deadly. There's another side story. He went to Northwest Missouri State, and he had a roommate that had property down in Northwest Iowa, and so he invited us to go hunting there with no dogs. And this, I'll never forget this. This is no joke. Let's see, there was 3 of us. We put up at least 400 quail that day with no dogs. You didn't know, you couldn't see them. Sometimes they'd flush behind us. And so you had to be careful that you didn't shoot off your buddy's head as you're wheeling around to shoot one that's behind you after you fill your pants because of the way they burst and take off.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. But it was just an amazing experience. And at the end, you could tell a snowstorm was coming in. So we got in the car and we're driving down the road, and I looked, and here in a farmer's front yard were evergreens, and there was probably 40 quail in those evergreens trying to protect themselves from the oncoming storm. I went up and I asked the farmer, I said, "Hey, you got some birds in those trees. Can we shoot them?" "Yeah, go ahead, no problem." So we got out. We had 2 guys on the road, and I stayed in the other side to flush them out. And so they flew all different directions. I think we maybe got about 3 or 4 out of that. But like I said, there's probably about 40 in there. It was just another sight that was something that sticks with you and really cool.
Was that your first experience with quail hunting?
It was.
Yeah.
It was. And I always wanted to do that. And the other side story is I can't remember how many we got. I think in total we got about a dozen. And Ed's mom was a very good cook, and we cleaned them, and she had us out for the quail that she made with rice and all that stuff. It was wonderful.
Wow.
We were just, we thought we were kings eating those quail. It was really cool. She was a very nice lady.
Did you ever run into any quail, wild quail, when you were hunting in Iowa? Like when you're up around Iowa Falls, did you ever?
No.
Yeah.
No. My brother-in-law's farm had a couple of times we ran into some partridge, which was kind of interesting. Always just kind of seemed right around my brother-in-law's farm. And most of the time we didn't even have a chance to pull the trigger. They would kind of flush early or something like that. I can't remember if we ever really got any type of deal, but nice bird, but it kind of flushed a little bit different than pheasants, and so we didn't really get a chance to shoot them real good.
Now, I know you keep in touch with a lot of people from back home around there in Iowa Falls. So what's the bird situation there now? I mean, obviously the numbers are probably not like they used to be, but are the numbers back a little bit?
Yeah, it's a good question. They came back. In fact, ironically, Eddie gets the Iowa Falls paper, and he sent me a little article about the pheasant populations, which they do every year. And north central Iowa, where we grew up, was rated really good. Well, ironically, my good buddy from Minneapolis with two other people, I'm sitting here in Florida, and because I did the South Dakota trip, I said I can't do that, you know. But anyway, he reviewed the places that I had contacts with, and he knows the rules. That he has to, you know, talk to the people, go up and you know, tell him who he is. He's been with me many times. We always live by the rule that you never hunt if you don't have permission. And so they did that 2 weeks ago, and I talked to him, and they really had some great hunting.
Oh, good.
Back in the old spots. He said one other time they saw some other hunters type of thing, but there was no conflicts with that at all because I gave him plenty of places to hunt, and cover was good, the corn was out, and they really had a fun time. He thanked me many times.
Yeah.
To do that, because once again I'm big on building relationships, and I told him, because he did it one other time. I said, here's what you do: you go up to the I can't even remember what it was, but you get him a basket of fruits or goodies or whatever, and he did, and I asked him, and he said he did it again, and you know, that's a way to keep that relationship with the farmers, you know, type of thing.
It's a way to get
so
back,
they were all
asked
loving
back
it.
again. Yeah.
In fact, the one was a classmate of my brother-in-law, my wife's oldest sister. They went to school together, and she owns a farm around Radcliffe. And she cracked up. She called me and she said, Bob, the perfect timing was perfect. My kids were over and they were really hungry. Thanked me profusely about that basket of fruit that they got and everything.
There you go.
She's hilarious. But it's just
great.
That's the way you do it, I think. Yeah.
What for the people who have never experienced it? How can you describe hunting standing corn? Because I know you've done it before, because we all have. How do you describe that to somebody that's never experienced it?
Well, there's another good question. Here's the deal. When I first started hunting, you know, back in '67 and so forth, the corn was much shorter than what it is now. And you're right, especially at my brother-in-law's place. We would kind of open the season there, and if the corn was in, we had our girlfriends or our wives with us at the time, and they would be hunting right with us, and so they'd be walking along. We'd have a guy with a gun about every other one, and sure enough, there was birds in there. I got a fox one time in the cornfield, and that was kind of interesting. He came up, and I got him, and but anyway, we'd get birds doing it that way, also walking standing corn. The problem is you can't do it now because corn is about 10 foot tall.
Yeah.
And it's spaced so close together, there's no way you could walk that. So we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, and it's kind of too bad. I mean, in a way, my granddad, when he farmed, he raised more foxtails and weeds in the corn rows than corn most days. So, and it was great habitat. But unfortunately, like you said, you know, now, and agriculture has just changed. Taller corn, like you mentioned, and you know, tighter rows, and there's just nothing there for the birds once the harvest comes, and so it's just changed a lot.
Yeah.
But like you said, to be a good hunter, I guess you have to learn to adapt as well, and so you have to kind of do your scouting to know where those places are that you can still find birds.
Yeah. I also have the opinion that I call them millennials. They're not interested in hunting. They'd rather sit on the couch and play video games, and I just think that's been a decrease in hunters, because it sure seems like the DNR likes to see you buying a license and all of that good stuff. And in the beginning years, we'd see a fair number of cars doing what we were doing. Now that number has dropped substantially.
Right.
So,
now
my deal is I'm 75 years old. My goal is I want to hunt till I'm at least 80 and
Yeah.
hopefully beyond.
Yeah.
I don't even want to think about trying to having to give it up.
Well, and that's great. I had a gentleman in the field with me yesterday that he's 80, and you know he's out there. You know he had some physical challenges, but he got 3 birds that day. He can still shoot, and
Oh, that's
you know,
super.
and
Yeah, be happy.
when you get some good dog work and you get it in the right place where you know a dog has that bird pinned in such a situation that you could get him up there where he could. If we got him within shooting range, he was going to get his bird. That was for sure. So so that was
great.
that was
You
great.
gotta love it.
That was great to see him out there. So I hope that you're able to continue as well. So how important is it? What was it to you, and is it to you? Obviously, you've got some sons that sounds like they're hunters. How important was it to pass that passion on to your next generation, to your kids?
Oh no, it was great. You know, the oldest is 3 years older than his brother. He's 53 now, and then my youngest is 50. And the older one, for some reason, he's okay with it, you know, kind of thing. He's not chomping at the bit to go. But my younger one is he went to South Dakota last year. And when he came back, he was on the phone with me for an hour saying, "You got to do this. You got to do this," and talked to me for an hour, you know, kind of deal. So we went out this year, and because it's all a family deal, there was 12 of us, and my nephew organizes it and everything. And for sure, you know, I'm gonna go back. It was first time ever in South Dakota. And it's really something that you'll never forget when you go into a field. And we did it the second day. We went into another area. The owner takes you out in a bus with the dogs and everything. And he has the fields all set up with sorghum, which I'd never hunted in sorghum before, which in South Dakota is everywhere, which is a phenomenal cover crop. And then they use it for food also. So second day we get into this area where there's a big pond and there were some reeds around it. And as soon as we got there, a couple of roosters came up and I thought, this could be pretty good. Well, about 5 minutes later, true story, about 250 roosters exploded going everywhere.
Wow.
And that is a sight to behold. Shooting, you know, trying to figure out where you're going to shoot in that whole deal. And I mean, it was just amazing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I've been there before. It's been a while, but yeah, that's you finally catch yourself just watching, you know, because you never see it's unbelievable that many birds all in the air at the same time. Yeah. So,
and they were all big fat roosters, big long tail feathers. And I always tell people too, a rooster pheasant is the most beautiful bird God ever created. There's nothing more beautiful than to see the colors on them, and it's just a sight to behold. It's amazing.
So when's the last time you were in Iowa hunting? Has it been a couple years ago, 3 years ago?
Yeah, it was a couple years ago. This year, coming back from South Dakota, I've got relatives that live in Fulda, which is in the southwest corner of the state of Minnesota, and I got to hunt there a day and a half with my nephew's son, young kid, and we had some real good times there, type of thing. We got a total of 4 in 2 days, and it was just great. I hadn't hunted with him ever before. Just a great kid, loves the huts, and of course had my dog and the whole deal. So it was just a great time. Loved it.
Yeah, it's a great way to, as you said, to pass on that love of hunting to the next generation, and just to spend that time, to spend that valuable time in the field, you know, with a nephew or your sons or just friends, good friends, you know. It's just it's a, you know,
you'll always have those memories.
Oh yeah. And that's now we talked about some of your dogs that you've had, and do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite dog story?
Well, yeah, I was thinking about this. This goes back to Bella, the one I've got now, the short hair, who's also liver and white. And here's a remarkable thing about both of them. Neither one of my short hairs bark ever. They're, in the house a lot of the times, but they never bark. They never had accidents in the house at all. And so I call them low maintenance, and they're just amazing that way. But with Bella, when I picked her out and we looked at the whole litter, the guy told me I bought her from, he said, she's the alpha female in this litter because they were all little, and I observed all of them. I can't remember how many there was, but the one that was a little bit cuter than her just sat on her haunches and just didn't do anything. Bella was out looking around, her nose was on the ground, just little, going around, moving around, always on the move. So I said, that's the one I want. And so I got her, and then when I took her out to this gal that I met who has a kennel in a northern suburb of Minnesota or Minneapolis. I went out there one day. She had a connection with some people from Pheasants Forever, and she was going to do a little training thing there at her kennel. And I pulled up with Bella. She came out to the car to greet me, and she said, "Bob, do you have a Wonder Lead?" I go, "What?" She said, "Yeah, a Wonder Lead." And she said, "No problem, I've got one." So we put it on, and I didn't know this. There's a nerve that runs from both of their ears, and this Wonder Lead, which is a plasticized like a lasso. You put it on her, and if they struggle against it, it presses against that nerve, and they can't fight it. Honestly, when we put it on her, she fought it so violently, I thought, if she doesn't quit, she's going to break her neck. Pretty soon, she settled down and she looked at me like, "Okay, you're in charge, not me." It's a true story. And then we went through some drills, and she did every one of them perfectly. I just couldn't get her over. She didn't have the Wonder Lead on her at that time, but she'd already knew, I don't want that Wonder Lead to be put back on me again. So she listened to me, obeyed. We went through all these steps. I was so fired up. I called my wife, and on the way home, I stopped at Cabela's to see, hey, I walked in and I talked to the people. I said, "Hey, you got something called the Wonder Lead." They didn't know what I was talking about. So then I found out that it's made by Gun Dog Supply in Mississippi. I actually called them today, and I told them, I said, "I'm curious, do you still have the Wonder Lead?" They said, "Yes, absolutely." And so I said, "Okay, I'm just curious." I put this on a piece of paper along with some other notes that, in my opinion, if you wanted to promote this as stress-free ideas on how to train your hunting dog, I've kind of put my little thoughts together with Gun Dog Supply, the Gun Dog book, and some other little tips on that, because it worked. It was just amazing because I knew she was the alpha, and after I got her, that one experience, I didn't have to do it again. She listened to what I said. I worked with her. Both of them, I started with working on discipline, listening to the command. If the command says, "Whoa," you got to stop. And one time with my first dog, there was a busy road that went in front of our street, and for somehow I was coming back from my walk, and she stopped. I walked across the road, and here comes a car at a pretty fast speed. You shouldn't have been doing that in a residential area. I yelled at her, "Whoa!" And she sat right down on her haunches. My point being, if I hadn't have trained her on that, she would have tried to run across that road. Maybe she would have got hit, maybe not. I don't know. But that really got my attention. But she had that discipline in her to say, my master said, "Whoa, I'm going to sit here until he says come," So anyway.
Now, to wrap up, Bob, we appreciate your time and some of the stories that we've talked about tonight. But what if you had to define it or tell somebody what bird hunting means has meant to you in your life? I mean, how would you describe that?
Well, for sure, it's added years to my life. Just the pure joy of training a dog and seeing how smart they are. it's like I said earlier, it's almost like they know exactly what I'm saying. And, and then, and then when you work with them, you build a bond. And I think that's really important because, and I told you this earlier, I talked to a trainer one time at a Pheasants Forever conference, and we were talking, and he said, I got all kinds of customers. I train their dogs. They pick them up for the opening day of duck season or pheasant season or whatever. The dog has to work perfectly for them or they get upset. Well, he says, they miss the point. The dog wants to bond with its owner.
Mm-hmm.
And you do the training rather than hire it out to somebody. Now, maybe I'm hurting your business when I say that, but I just go to myself, I would never do it any other way. It was as much for me as it was for her, and it's just a blast. Every morning now I get up at 5:45 in the morning. We go on a 2-block walk, and on the one on both ways, I tell her to stop. She waits until I get a block away from her. I release her. She comes running up to me because I want her heartbeat to, be pounded. And we do it both directions. Cars go by us. She's sitting, and it's really funny because I know neighbors are saying, "Boy, there's that guy again, walking along. His dog is sitting a block from him, sitting there until I release her, and then she takes off like a jet." But that's how we start our morning, But it just goes on and on. It's a great benefit for me. It's been wonderful for my mental and physical health. And, I just think if people get into it with the right attitude and everything, they'd see what I'm seeing. It's amazing.
Yes.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. And well, Bob, we really appreciate the time we spent together and sharing some of your memories and your hunting stories. I think people will love to hear it, and I hope you're able to keep hunting until you're in your 80s. So that would be a great goal.
Well, that's my goal to hit, and if I can, I'm going to go beyond that.
There you go.
I'm not going to quit until I can't.
Somebody's got to be the oldest guy hunting birds out there, right? It might as
well
be you.
Keep going.
It might as well be
you.
Well, I'm not too far behind you, so hopefully I can keep it up as well because there's some those dogs need somebody. They need to be in the field. That's what they were born to do.
Absolutely, it's in their DNA, like you can't believe.